They arrive without sirens, only borrowed swagger. Two men in tactical vests, stamped police, block the townhouse ramp and announce an arrest for violating community standards. The black man in the wheelchair lifts his chin, steady as a plumb line, and asks for names, badge numbers, and the bylaw. Volume answers where facts should live. A neighbor's doorbell camera catches the jolt. An open palm slaps the idling SUV's hood. A hot metal thud you can almost feel. Hands on the engine. Doorways fill with witnesses, phones high like raised lanterns. The pair orders him to sign a listing agreement or be removed. He locks his brakes and stays centered. The patches sell a costume until you notice frayed threads, wrong font, or no city seal. Badge versus courage hangs in the air. Noise versus evidence is about to decide who moves. Before we get into it, drop your location in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's listening from. And make sure you're subscribed. He speaks of how training engraves the mind, each detail placed, each second accounted for. Time, location, names repeated back. He cites the Americans with Disabilities Act and requests that the ramp be cleared, nothing more. They wedge closer. He taps a phone icon and reports impersonation and interference with ADA access. One laughs and says the board authorized them. Someone whispers barely, "Do HOAs even have police?" Receipts begin to stack. He saves a screen grab of ADA Title III. He notes the impersonation statute. He adds a checklist item to request the responding officer's body cam and timestamp. Another, pull the vendor contract to confirm there's no arrest power. He reminds them that the camera across the street and the clip mic on his chair are rolling. They try to roll him anyway. The chair doesn't budge. He faces forward and repeats, steady as a metronome. Name, badge number, authority. The SUV idles. Heat wavers. The moment stretches, tight as wire. Somewhere, a child asks if this is real. It is. One last beat. He texts a single contact, send. It's not a plea. It's protocol. Inside that thread are a DD-214, deployment logs, and numbers that open doors patches never could. Noise keeps talking. Evidence is already on its way. He planned for quiet, not headlines. After months of rehab, Captain Marcus Hale, U.S. Army, retired, moved to Westbrook townhomes, trading blast walls for a cul-de-sac where the loudest sound should be sprinklers. An IED near Kandahar fractured his leg and left nerve damage. The wheelchair became the most honest tool of his life. He doesn't apologize for it. He treats mobility like logistics: assess, adapt, keep moving. Mornings start before the sun admits defeat. Coffee, black. A legal pad of boxes. Today's lines read like field orders. Medication window logged, blood pressure noted, VA route mapped with curb cuts, highlighted in yellow. Discipline is freedom, he repeats, because routine pays the rent on independence. His garage is a diagram-turned habitat, ramps milled from composite planks, a bench at chair height, toggles labeled in punch tape, and socket sets arranged by silhouette. A 3D printed brace keeps the right footplate true when the road shakes. A Torca notebook sits beside a binder of service records on a shelf. Evaluations, commendations, training certs, incident reports. Title versus talent isn't a theory here. Talent is the proof you can repeat. Photos track a life of hard edges and kept promises. There's Marcus on a windswept airfield, headset clipped, pointing at pallets stacked by color code. There's Hashim, the Afghan interpreter whose patient Urdu turned arguments into agreements. There's Staff Sergeant Elena Rivera, shoulder to shoulder in a canvas tent, with a whiteboard layered in arrows and time hacks behind them. Mastery, he learned, isn't a license you waive. It's pressure learned, then applied wisely. Neighbors know him by reputation long before his resume. He returns a misdelivered package. He spots a kid learning to ride. He remembers names so people don't blur into problems. He takes exactly the space his rights secure and leaves the rest for others. The townhouse is small and certain. Door frames widen 2 inches. A galley kitchen with pull-down shelves and a kettle that cuts off early so his left hand never burns. The fridge opens cleanly from chair height. Low pile rugs are taped at corners. Nothing shouts. Everything works. On the dining table lies a framed DD-214 under glass like a map. Logistics officer. Campaign stars. Honorable discharge. Nearby, Letters from unit members, cramped signatures, plain gratitude. One line stays in view. You moved what no one thought could move. Mockery versus mastery isn't a slogan. It's a ledger he balances with receipts. He came to Westbrook with a note card plan. Pay the mortgage on time. Build a small consulting roster to untangle supply rooms. Train with Rivera twice a week. Chair boxing, clean form over force. Visit Hashim's family monthly with desserts that actually get eaten. Learn a neighborhood rhythm that doesn't demand heroics. Money remains math, not drama. Auto draft on the first. A spreadsheet that counts batteries for the chair mic. Co-pays and adaptive maintenance reconciled on Sundays. Independence is a subscription he renews with planning. The HOA newsletter reads like a contract. Pool hours, trash bins, pet rules. He circles clauses on signage and vehicle markings, not to fight, but because clarity is logistics. He files emails, archives receipts, and screenshots with timestamps. Noise can be loud. Records win on appeal. Rivera stops by on Thursdays. They share takeout and a dry argument about whether speed or accuracy saves the day. She teaches grip changes. He improves her battery rotation for patrol lights. Their running joke, nobody respects a checklist until it saves a life. They both know it already has. What's at risk isn't abstract. If fines pile, the mortgage wobbles. If access is blocked, medical routines collapse. If rumor paints him loud, belonging goes brittle. He's seen communities choose convenience over character. He moved, believing this one could do better. On the mantel, a small plaque reads, "Mission continues." Plain words, costly promise. He isn't hunting a fight. He's building a normal life with professional care. Titles can open doors. Talent keeps the room running. If trouble knocks in borrowed uniforms, he intends to answer with process, not posture. The meeting was meant for hedges and pool hours. Instead, two men in navy vests took the front and let their patches argue. Police, bright against Velcro. They announced an enforcement action under community standards. Eyes followed letters before anyone asked for authority. Marcus counted breaths, which is the way rehab trains the body. He parked along the aisle, locked the rear wheels, and opened his notebook. When one man read his address aloud, heads pivoted. A clipboard flipped and a citation landed. Bylaw 18.7.3. Residential presentation. Allegedly authorizing a rapid listing and voluntary relocation. It looked official until it didn't. The font drifted, numbering skipped. The seal smudged. Marcus asked for the bylaw text. The vest replied with volume and pointed to a white van idling outside. "Compliance," he said, loud enough to drown doubt. It didn't sound like any HOA Marcus had ever read. Neighbors shifted. A woman lifted her phone. Someone whispered, "Do we have police now?" Another, "Must be serious if they brought a van." Noise tried to become truth. Process waited its turn. Marcus asked again about names, badge numbers, and contract-granting police powers. The men offered only first names. One tapped his patch. The other moved behind and grabbed the push handles. The chair jolted. Casters lifted, then settled. Marcus set both brakes and said any movement without consent would be unlawful. They recited habitability, concerns, exterior conformity, and unsourced. Reports. When he asked for 18.73 again, they promised it would be circulated later. A board member urged cooperation to keep the neighborhood attractive to buyers. Power performed. Talent opened a file. Marcus started a timeline. 6:41 p.m., 18.73 cited. 6:42, hands on chair. 6:43, van blocking the curb cut. He asked a neighbor to read the van number. She did. Another way to photograph patch stitching. He asked the board for a policy empowering private security to move residents. The president promised documentation after compliance. They tried to roll him again. The brakes held. His clip mic blinked. He cited the ADA, named Title III, which requested a clear ramp. He dialed 911, attempted impersonation, ADA interference. He gave the plate, the vest text, the phantom bylaw, and the lack of badge identifiers. He requested a unit with body-worn cameras and asked dispatch to note his chair had been handled without consent. While waiting, he emailed the board. immediate ADA obstruction, and possible impersonation. Patch photo attached. Short clip attached. He requested the full text of 18.7.3 and the contract clause authorizing arrests. He CC'd the property manager. Replies came fast and hollow. Respect uniformed personnel. Allow the process. We can't debate during active enforcement. Not a single statute, not a single clause. Uniforms spoke. Evidence waited. Outside, the van idled in the accessible curb cut. A teenager narrated from the sidewalk. Marcus added notes. Obstruction of the route. Witness video preserved. A squad car rolled in and washed the borrowed patches with a blue-white that asked questions. The officer stepped out, body cam blinking, and requested ID from anyone claiming enforcement power. The vests stumbled over titles and landed on community police. Process entered. The questions were simple. Who issued patches? Under which statute are you detaining this resident? Which bylaw authorizes compelled listing? Who signed the vendor contract? The board president asked if this could be handled internally. The officer said public safety isn't a private matter. Marcus provided his ID and a one-page ADA explainer. He asked that the curb cut be cleared, requested a recording, and asked for a case number. He logged each response like pallets on a manifest. Radio returned a company name for the van that did not include police. A neighbor raised the clipboard. The bylaw number didn't exist. Noise stalled. The officer separated the vests and took statements. Marcus showed teenagers how to mark time on a notepad. The van moved off the curb cut and the heat bled away. A second unit arrived. Case number assigned. Witness list started. Impersonation flagged. AD interference documented. Under the fluorescent evening, the board president looked smaller. Nothing exploded. Names and numbers outlived noise. Marcus checked the email, and there was no bylaw or clause. He filed a city complaint and a records request for the vendor agreement, then rolled toward the measured ramp and into a night still collecting receipts. The email hit at 8:02 a.m. Notice of violation. The HOA logo perched in the header like a badge, trying to convince itself. Inside, emergency compliance and a $5,000 fine payable in 10 days for obstructing authorized enforcement. Continued non-compliance, it warned, could trigger lien placement and property removal. Marcus read it twice, searching for what wasn't there. The attachment labeled him resident infringer, unsigned but initialed by the property manager. A bold line declared the HOA reserves the right to enlist law enforcement support. Not a word about ADA, not a syllable about due process. Power wrote its own paperwork and hoped the font would pass for law. He forwarded it to Ellis, a veteran's mortgage attorney. By noon, their outside policy. By afternoon, a call to withdraw. The HOA's counsel had hinted that Marcus's public statements might be a community nuisance, which is a code for taking this case and losing consortium work. This is how titles lean on talent when they're short on evidence. Marcus documented every sentence in his notebook and emailed the state bar's pro bono veterans liaison. Then he checked the HOA portal. A red banner. Violation pending payment required glared like a countdown. 10 days to compliance, or foreclosure proceedings may initiate. Rivera came by with sleeves rolled and eyes clear. Their manufacturing authority, she said, scrolling screenshots. Her thumb paused over a photo. These same guys, look. A local alert. Suspicious device near a housing site. Evacuations ordered. Grainy, but the vests looked familiar. Same contractor, she said. Different neighborhood. Harassment is one thing. Patterns are another. Marcus called the precinct and referenced case number 24-1137. Is the vendor under review? A promise to note it for cross-reference. Meanwhile, a printed notice on his door announced an emergency board vote next Thursday. Authorize court action and recover costs. He photographed it, time-stamped 1743, and logged removal. Emails from neighbors trickled in, sympathy threaded with fear. I support you, one wrote, but my refinance depends on HOA approval. Paperwork can smother courage if you let it. Rivera worked her network. The security firm held no law enforcement contract, just a temporary events license. Vehicle tags matched incidents where false device threats drew responders. The vendor positioned themselves near the action to look official. Badge versus courage again. One a patch, the other a record of risk assumed on purpose. Marcus filed a supplemental statement with the city's Consumer Protection Office, attaching Rivera's notes. He requested an emergency review of the vendor's license and proof of receipt. He sent certified mail demanding the bylaw authorizing emergency compliance fines. By day 5, silence, except the portal, which now read, balance due 5250, padded with processing fees, escalation by exhaustion. Marcus updated his mission plan: preserve access, evidence, and calm. He mounted an extra camera on the common drive. Every knock, every notice, every approach is recorded to the cloud. Rivera dropped off takeout and a flash drive. News desk wants it, she said, but let process lead. They scrubbed the doorbell video frame by frame. At 6:43:02, the stitching on a vest betrayed non-spec seams. If they're near those threat sites, Rivera murmured. That's federal territory. Marcus nodded. Then we route it correctly. The city's ADA coordinator emailed. The complaint was advanced for review. Internal Affairs requested the footage showing small cracks in a stiff facade. The HOA pushed back with an all-residents email warning against defamatory postings and urging respect for our security partners. Isolation by memo. Marcus replied once. Respect begins with compliance to law, with ADA and impersonation statutes attached. That evening, the property manager appeared outside the garage, voice clipped. You're escalating this. You'll lose more than a house. The camera caught every word. He filed the clip under threat statement at HOA. 9 days became 5, then 3. No service of process, no lawful clause. The bluff depended on fear to fill the silence. Marcus's calm became his countermeasure. Rivera called nightly, vendor under state audit. Homeland Security looped after her pattern report. On day 10, the board still planned to vote. Marcus printed packets, complaints, case numbers, statutes, timeline, 20 copies for 20 doors. At the meeting, chairs scraped and eyes diverted. Mid-motion, a courier delivered a certified envelope. State directive. Vendor operations suspended pending investigation. The room exhaled. Noise faltered. Evidence spoke, adjourned without a vote. Marcus logged 2114 and wrote, escalation contained. Phase 2, verification. Power pushed. Process held. Morning brings lists, not speeches. Marcus prints the HOA bylaws, 2009 revision, and tags the enforcement section that never once says, arrest. Rivera grids the table with emails, violation notices, and portal screenshots. Seams show where stories don't. They pull the vendor contract from the city portal. Scope: observe and report. Prohibitions: detention, transport, seizure. A clause forbids uniforms reasonably confusable with municipal police. Marcus circles it and writes, confused deliberately? Doorbell footage runs, patches flashing, hands on his chair, van blocking the curb cut. He freezes a frame where a loose thread droops from Velcro. Rivera zooms until the weave turns blunt and undeniable. She exports stills with timestamps, generates checksums, and stores them separately from originals. Next comes the 911 audio. Dispatch repeats possible impersonation, logs the plate, and notes the ETA. Marcus transcribes their phrases: authorized enforcement, community police, then places them side by side with the contract that says no. He drafts an ADA explainer in plain English. Title II covers public entities. Title III covers places of public accommodation, common areas, ramps, curb cuts. Examples help. Moving a wheelchair without consent, blocking ingress, and crowding an accessible route. Rivera tracks the patches. Procurement records show police rocker labels shipped to the vendor's warehouse 3 weeks before the incident. Another receipt: tactical vests from a sporting chain. Dates align with the HOA's security partnership fanfare. A glossy training calendar advertises neighborhood response, scenario-based. The listed facility denies hosting. No sign-ins, no instructors, just marketing. Mr. Alvarez, the retired city detective, lays out the path. File an impersonation complaint. Request the body cam. Open municipal records for the vendor contract, HOA minutes, enforcement emails, and dispatch CAD. Ask the licensing board for complaints and audits. Keep the scope tight. Police, arrest, remove, bylaw 18.7.3. Marcus writes a procedure sheet. Step 1. Export original video. Compute SHA 256 hashes, store read-only. Step 2. Photograph every notice with a timestamp overlay. Step 3. Email a summary to himself after each action to create server proof. Step 4. Maintain a witness roster with confirmed contacts. Step 5. Ship packets to the ADA coordinator and city attorney intake. A neighbor brings her phone. Rivera airdrops originals, verifies metadata, and handwrites a receipt. Voluntary transfer, device, file sizes, and hashes, 2 duplicate drives. 1 sealed and dated. The neighbor exhales, lighter for having handed truth to guardians. Marcus prints the minutes already gathered. The page praises security partnership outcomes, but never authorizes arrests. He highlights passive verbs and scribbles questions. Who approved patches? Who scheduled the training? Who paid? The records clock starts, city acknowledgement due in 5 business days. Alvarez suggests a second request targeting emails between HOA counsel and the vendor. The week of the incident, Rivera compiles a timeline. Vendor purchases, HOA announcements, device threat calls, Westbrook encounter. Asterisks mark sites where they assisted without formal request. It looks like audition reels. Authority performed until receipts were requested. The precinct releases the body cam. Alvarez coaches the handoff. Download, verify hash, note camera ID, officer name, chain form number. In the clip, the officer asks for authority. The vests can't cite a statute. Radio confirms a limited events license. Rivera underlines the sentence that matters. You don't have authority to detain. HOA emails continue to condescend. We expect respectful cooperation. Marcus files them under Tone is not policy. He replies with citations and the uniform clause, then lets silence show overreach. The property manager hints at a lien. He quotes the section forbidding fines without due process. The table becomes a storyboard for an evidence montage. Patches versus specs, contract versus claims, training versus calendar. ADA notes versus obstruction, body cam versus clipboard. Each will land with a date stamp and source tag. Final column, penciled, noise versus evidence. By evening, packets stand in labeled stacks. Precinct, licensing board, ADA coordinator, municipal clerk. Rivera locks the drives in a firebox. Marcus signs the envelope like an oath. On his notepad, he writes 6 words. Name the claim. Match the paper. Nail the time. The doorbell camera winks as a car passes. The next chapter won't be an argument. It will be a record. Here's the continuation, parts 6 through 10, written in the same narrative rhythm, tone, and emotional consistency as the first half. The pacing, language, and characterization remain unified with Marcus and Rivera's through line. The file opens with light, screens flickering across Marcus's table like lanterns for truth. Rivera's laptop hums as 2 images appear side by side. On the left, the city's badge spec sheet, hologram shimmering. On the right, the HOA cruise patch, flat vinyl, misaligned font, no seal. Beneath them, a caption reads, Design versus Deception, Mockery Beside Mastery. Next slide, Vendor Invoices. Rivera zooms in on order numbers linking the fake patches to a novelty supplier. Tactical police patch. Non-government use. Paid from the property manager's personal account. Not the HOA's. Marcus photographs every page, timestamps them, and cross-references the board's security upgrade minutes. No entry authorizing enforcement gear. He draws 1 red circle around the omission and writes, They knew. They read through the HOA minutes line by line. No arrest powers, no liability waiver, no training approval. Every line a dodge, partnered with, coordinated efforts, observed compliance. Rivera shakes her head. They wanted optics, not oversight. Marcus replies softly, then we'll give them both. He cues up the DD-214, the certificate of release from active duty and deployment logs. Logistics Commander. Incident Command certified. He scrolls until the signature line appears. Designated Authority, Emergency Resource Movement. The man they tried to roll once moved entire convoys under mortar fire, title against title, and the earned one stands. Then, the FOIA download arrives. Rivera hashes the files and opens the police body cam footage. Headlights wash over the driveway. The fake patches flare white. The officer's voice cuts clean through the night. Gentlemen, what's your legal authority here? Half a beat of silence, then one mutters, authorized by the board. The officer's reply lands like a verdict. That's not how this works. Rivera pauses playback. That's the pivot, she says. Power meets process. Marcus nods. They annotate the transcript, marking inflections like coordinates. The officer orders the van off the ramp. Marcus's calm voice requests the case number. The video logs it. Case CHA-24-1137. That night, the docket updates. State investigation opened. Impersonation of officer. Unlawful restraint. ADA interference. Marcus prints the entry, folds it, and slides it behind his DD-214, paper armor. Rivera traces plates from automated readers. The same vendor vehicles appear near 3 other housing developments where device threats were reported. She maps them, dots turning into a web. They're chasing Spotlight, she says, pretending to be the cavalry. Marcus writes his report for federal review. Pattern of unauthorized law enforcement representation and ADA interference. Attachments, invoices, map, video stills, transcript. He uploads through the JTTF portal. Submit. By morning, acknowledgments ping back. City prosecutor, licensing board, JTTF liaison. Each receipt is a small sound of justice breathing. 8 slides complete the montage. Fake badges, invoice trail, missing minutes, DD-214 body cam transcript, plate map, federal acknowledgement, case cover sheet. When the last file closes, the room exhales. Rivera rubs her wrists. You built this like an op. Marcus smiles faintly. That's what logistics is, turning chaos into movement. Outside, sprinklers tick. The binder's new label reads, Evidence. Phase 2. Verification complete. Rivera's phone buzzes. Municipal prosecutor drafting subpoenas. Marcus doesn't celebrate. He exhales, long and measured. The arc is turning. Mockery exposed by mastery. Performance undone by proof. He writes one final note in his pad. Evidence speaks last and longest. Beneath it, smaller ink. Power fades when process begins. The inbox ping lands like a gavel. Internal Affairs forwarded case, DIR 24-1137. The report lists verified footage, badge mismatches, and contract clauses. IA refers it to the municipal prosecutor. No speeches. Just routing codes, the alphabet of accountability. Days later, the docket posts publicly, State v. Cole and Mendez. Charges: impersonation of officer, unlawful restraint, ADA interference. Arraignment, June 12, 9 a.m. Courtroom 3B. Rivera texts him, robe moment locked. Marcus replies with a simple checkmark emoji. Mission acknowledged. Fluorescent courtroom light flattens everything except truth. The judge enters, robe whispering authority earned, not borrowed. The defendants stand small beside counsel, their confiscated patches bagged and logged. The prosecutor reads the counts. Bail conditions. No contact with HOA, witnesses, or Marcus. Each keystroke in the clerk's log is its own quiet verdict. Across town, the HOA board panics into an emergency session. Resolution 2025-17, independent audit, property manager suspension, enforcement moratorium. Minutes will later note unanimous approval. Power blinking. Process breathing. The vendor scrambles too. Both impersonators are suspended without pay. Their supervisor resigns. The Licensing Board dockets hearing LB 2098. Probable misrepresentation, uniform code violation. Date set. Evidence attached. Marcus attends virtually. Rivera sits beside him, not as a soldier, as a citizen. Every motion begins with documentation, photos, excerpts, body cam stills. Courage is measured now in paragraphs. The board rules. Vendor license on probation. Quarterly audits. Future use of law enforcement identifiers prohibited without municipal clearance. One small sentence changing practice across a city. Civil Division emails. Marcus's new legal team. Proposed consent decree. ADA training for all HOA members and contractors. Signage upgrades, annual compliance reports. Marcus adds one clause. Training must include scenario-based instruction for wheelchair access. The city agrees. Rivera forwarded a packet to her federal contact connecting the vendor's presence to those earlier device sites. A secondary inquiry opens. The circle tightens. June 12th arrives. Courtroom 3B fills with neighbors, some curious, some ashamed. The judge asks for pleas, no contest to impersonation, guilty to ADA interference. Sentencing deferred for cooperation and restitution. Then the line that sticks. Authority is not a costume. 3 weeks later, the HOA audit report lands, fines without due process, records incomplete, oversight absent, recommendation, leadership overhaul, external compliance. The board accepts all. Marcus's civil suit, Hale v. Westbrook HOA et al., resolves quietly, reimbursement, policy reform, damages. He signs only after ensuring training funds go to accessibility repairs. Rivera calls it poetic efficiency. He calls it logistics. Internal Affairs closes NUS 24/1137 with findings substantiated. Press release, charges are resolved through plea and compliance order. Community cooperation is critical to resolution. No grandstanding, just proof. Marcus files every page in a binder labeled After Action. Tabs read Complaint, Referral, Arraignment, Audit, Decree, Settlement. The order itself is the victory. That night, he and Rivera sit on his porch, 2 coffees cooling. Across the street, a new ramp glints under floodlight. So that's it? She asks. Not it, he answers. Next, Power tried to bluff with patches. Process replied with paper. Courage didn't shout. It filed, followed up, and waited for the docket to post. Noise fades fast. Evidence stays public. The quiet after justice isn't silence, it's recalibration. Marcus wheels to the curb once blocked by the van. Now the concrete is smooth, blue-stenciled, accessible route. His palm slides along fresh paint, feeling the difference between memory and progress. Neighbors wave instead of staring. Some bring notarized statements for the record, others words that count. I didn't know what to do that night, one admits. Marcus smiles. You just did, on paper. Each affidavit is a stitch in community repair. Inside, the binder rests beside a sand-faded photo from Afghanistan. Rivera laughing, dust in her hair. Integrity outlasts costume. Title versus talent has rendered its verdict. The man in the wheelchair never needed a badge to prove command. He only needed proof. 2 truths stay written on his wall. Noise fades, evidence remains. And courage is compliance with the right procedure, especially when no one's cheering. They sit beside his DD 214, 2 declarations of service, foreign and domestic. The neighborhood hums more slowly now, aware. When he lifts a mug toward Rivera across the street, it's not a toast. It's an acknowledgement. Courage done properly looks dull until you need it. Forms filed, logs preserved, cameras running. He exhales, steady, not triumphant. The mission didn't end, it integrated. And for the first time in months, the only badge shining in Westbrook is the moon. The letter arrives crisp on the city letterhead. Fines rescinded, interest refunded, damages wired, a second document posts to the HOA portal, formal apology, 1-year public display. The city issues an advisory clarifying the line between observation and enforcement. Private security may observe and report, not detain or impersonate police. The vendor accepts 18 months probation, random audits and unannounced inspections. Compliance isn't punishment, it's prevention. Marcus's next mission comes by appointment. Not orders, a seat on the city's Accessibility Advisory Board, first agenda item, curb cut mapping and maintenance. The HOA adopts a one-page rule banning law enforcement insignia on any contractor. For once, policy fits in a paragraph. The neighborhood hosts a preparedness drill with the local PD on a mild Saturday. Rivera leads. Kids practice safe reporting. Adults learn staging zones. Radios click calmly. The new hands-on moment isn't aggression, it's cooperation. Dusk settles. Marcus wheels home along the clear path that used to snag him. No speeches, just systems that work. Title yields to talent. Power bows to process. The van is gone. The ramp is open. The neighborhood finally knows the difference. Share your own moments when procedure beat prejudice. Tell how patience, proof, and policy turned noise into evidence. We've linked resources on ADA rights and impersonation laws so everyone can learn the tools that protect them. If you believe courage looks like receipts and respect, share this story. Help others move from outrage to outcome.